It's not.
saying exactly some of the messaging that I've been talking about. Until I got involved, I didn't think about it that much. And I'm one of those people who religiously reads everything in my ballot, in my voter guide. But you get to some of these and it's so far down ballot and you've voted on 6,000 propositions that you are just exhausted. You have ballot fatigue, and it's hard to pay attention to those races. And part of what I'm hoping is that for every one of these that I do, and I'm doing like 2 a day right now, which is really fun. And but I should also be taking Amanda's suggestion and just posting one of them so that I don't have to talk all the time. But one of the things I'm doing is, for people who decide they're going to vote for me, tell all your friends, because it's from a trusted source. That means more than any email coming from me. When people tell their friends, hey, I met this person, she's, at the very least, sane, and and will steward this organization well. That is extremely, extremely meaningful. So hopefully that is one of the ways that we can get the word out. And I don't know if anybody is aware of this, but I was just endorsed by the Chronicle. I am a total outsider. I have zero, I actually actively refused any endorsements that had to do with CCSF on the principle that good board governance requires independent directors. And if all your directors are beholden to inside interests, you will never be able to achieve, your best self. So, not having any of those, those come with a lot of money and a lot of volunteer power. And so not having any of those, I've been running a very, lean, but fun and lively campaign, and creative. And to get the endorsement from the Chronicle was really great. I mean, I don't say this bragging, but I just, to be blunt and to be, clear, I am by far the most qualified person in the race. I mean, if you look at anybody else's resume, it's a very political resume. They've, been in City Hall, they've worked for different supervisors or whatever. That doesn't qualify you to run a $300 million educational institution. And, and it shows in the fact that it's kind of being run into the ground. So hopefully people will see that it's time to start taking this a little bit more seriously.
Where is the money being spent that it's so in such bad shape?
I couldn't hear you, Brad.
Where is the money being spent that the college is in such bad shape?
Well, a lot of places. One example is that last year.
Can I just stop you right here?
Sure.
Are we being recorded? Because maybe we should just start, or do you want?
Okay,
you're
yeah.
getting into substantive stuff. Do you want us to just start, or are we just still chatting? And if we're starting, then we should record.
I think we are recording.
We're recording. It says it on my.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
You want to get started? Do you want to kick us off, Amanda? And Brad, I will definitely get to your question.
Sure. Okay. So welcome, everyone. I'm Amanda Inocencio. I'm hosting this evening's webcast on behalf of Safe and Healthy Haight. And this is being sponsored by John Logan this evening, who is part of your leadership. Before us is our Richmond district, Marie Harabel. Did I pronounce your last name properly, or is it Harabiel?
Harabiel.
Harabiel.
Okay, I respond to any number of.
I'm sorry, because I've never asked you that. I always just call you Marie. Marie, who I met while I was running for candidate in District 1, and participating in the SOAR program, or the SOAR forums. And I subsequently withdrew my candidacy as District 1 supervisor. So now I'm free to sit on this side of the table and question you about your candidacy, which I'm super excited about. I'm really excited for you. You and I have talked previously about some of your history and your background and what your desires are for running for this particular seat in our city. It's a very important seat. And I would like to just start asking some questions to you about that, if I may now, unless there's something else we need to cover. Okay. So tell me what the seat is that you're running for and why you're interested in running for it.
Well, thank you all for being here.
And if I could just stop and back up just one moment, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself first in that, or incorporate that into my question?
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in San Francisco. I'm an 8th generation San Franciscan. I grew up in the Richmond district and still live in the Richmond district, not in the same house, but close by. And I have attended, schools in San Francisco. For college, I went to Georgetown. I went to University of Pennsylvania for law school. Came back to California. I had a federal clerkship down in LA, and then moved back to my beloved hometown, and have had most of my career here. I have a daughter and a stepson and a fabulous fiance, and he thinks I'm a little crazy for constantly just jumping in and getting involved. But he's also very, very, grateful that I'm willing to do all the things I'm willing to do. When I see a problem, I need to solve it. And so that's, as you referred to our experience in D1, that's something I just felt I needed to do. And then for me, I've been on the Board of Regents of Georgetown University for the last almost 7 years now, and have also been involved at various levels in numerous other educational institutions, from Holy Family Day Home, which is over in the Mission District. I led the building of the new building that's on 16th and Dolores right now, and was their board president for 8 years. I've been involved with things for fundraising and things like that for University of Pennsylvania. And I've been involved a lot with, my daughter's various schools. And, I have just a passion for education, which I think a lot of people do. And when I read, the reason I got into this race was reading about what was happening at CCSF. It hurt my heart. It gave me this just pain in my chest to see that such a beloved institution, such a really wonderful gem in our community, was in such dire trouble. And this is pre-pandemic. This is 2019. They operated at a 26% loss. That's mind-boggling. How could you get away with that? It's unreal. 3 years of deficit spending, and they've had in the last 8 years they've had 6 chancellors, 2 permanent chancellors, and 4 interim chancellors. And when you have really no leadership at the top, and it's not coming from the chancellor clearly, and it's definitely not coming from the current trustees, you find yourself in a position where there's no vision, and it's impossible to execute on that vision. And the people who are suffering, this is at the expense of the students and frankly the faculty as well. I mean, there's really wonderful faculty there. So when I saw that, I just needed to do what I could to help. And I honestly didn't quite realize what I was getting into. When I decided to do that, I honestly thought everyone who's a trustee must must come from a background that would give them the skills to run this $300 million organization. And what I was shocked to learn, that I mentioned a minute ago, is the people who are elected are running because they want an opportunity to get into politics in San Francisco. And if your only background is a bunch of political jobs you've had for supervisors or whatever, you really do not have the experience to run this organization. And not that any of these people in any way are, bad people. They just don't have the experience. And that, I think I can say that with a lot of confidence, considering the financial state it's in. That is a financial state. Your best and your brightest aren't running an institution that is failing in the way that this is. And it's even worse. Last week, the accreditation agency announced that they were putting CCS off at their highest risk and putting it on an enhanced monitoring, they're calling it, which is basically their watch list right before they start the process to pull their accreditation.
And this is not the first time, right? Weren't they a few years back decredited?
8 years ago, they went through a massive accreditation crisis, and it took years. And they were theoretically at the end of that process. They made it through, and they theoretically had their accreditation for 7 years. And, as all these accrediting agencies, the way that it works is you have your accreditation for a number of years, and then you're up for reaccreditation, and it's a normal cycle. This is not normal. This is, they got through that prior accreditation crisis. They were granted an accreditation for 7 years, and it has not been 7 years since that accreditation was granted, and now they're in another crisis where they have a list of things they must do in order to pull themselves off of this enhanced monitoring watch list. And they are related to the finances and the financial health of this organization.
And the lack of financial health that exists right now is due to directly, perhaps, the trustees, those folks who are managing the funding of and the resources of the City College?
I would say there's a couple of failure points. One is that there's been a lack of a permanent chancellor. So obviously when you don't have a CEO, when you don't have a leader who's there for many years to execute a vision, you're going to have problems. But that also goes back to the trustees. Without a board that is capable of selecting a really solid chancellor and really understanding what the needs are, and really understanding that just because someone is coming from another community college, they're capable of doing the job. That's not necessarily the case. You want someone who's a lifelong learner. You want someone who's curious and who's engaged and who has ideas. And, honestly, as the chancellor of a community college, it would be ideal if you could get all of the wonderful qualities required of a great leader, plus someone with community college experience. But when you've done other executive searches, you can pull from a field of experience to know that actually might not always be the best thing. So in my experience on the Presidio Trust Board, our current CEO was not the obvious on paper candidate. She ran a large health system. the Presidio Trust is, is commercial real estate, residential real estate, hospitality, a national park, it did not seem like a great fit. But when you look at her skills and what she was bringing to the job and the way that she could articulate her ability to do that job, it was clear she was the right choice, and she has been a phenomenal choice. She has been excellent at that job. When you have never done that before, you might think that you just need to take whoever presents themselves to you, which is, I think, what's been happening for the last 8 years. And you put somebody in place because you don't know any better. You don't know, what you don't know. And
Right.
so, they've put a series of chancellors in place who are finding that they've, bit off more than they can chew. And so they're all kind of getting out of Dodge, as they can. And then more specifically to the finances, I mean, there are definitely, other contributing factors, but for sure, the current board of trustees should be held 95% responsible for the disastrous financial condition. I honestly don't understand how it could get to this place. In every board experience that I've had, every audit and finance committee that I've sat on, I mean, we would have looked at this situation 3 years ago and said, no way, we got to start reining it in. We got to start figuring out, how do we get more money in creative ways, not just demanding that, taxpayers contribute more, but how are we creative about this? There's low-hanging fruit out there that has not been tapped into. So that's one thing I would love to see. But also, let's figure out what's going wrong with our expenses. And, even for me, someone who is just coming to the table now and getting up to speed on all of this, it's quite obvious immediately to me that, first of all, you shouldn't be giving yourselves a 10% raise when you are in financial trouble and you've been living on a deficit for the prior 3 years. You should also, be taking a careful look at, the functioning of your organization. I mean, there are 9 campuses spread throughout San Francisco. How can you cut down on some of the administration overhead? Each one of those campuses currently has a full overhead. We need to take a look at what makes sense. And there's some other really interesting things that have gone on in the pandemic. I posted something on my campaign Facebook page about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. The trustees approved a $500,000 expenditure to a consultant to sort of, pandemic proof them, to put up hand sanitizer stations and the plexiglass in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a big report in the paper on the shoddy workmanship, on the terrible job that was done. And of course, the trustees were like, well, it's an emergency. We have to do it. We'll negotiate the price down. Okay, so first of all, why weren't you overseeing this? Why didn't you know that this was shoddy 2 months ago? Number one. Number two, why were you even doing this in the first place? CCSF has not laid off a single person, has not furloughed a single person.
Mm-hmm.
There are entire and very talented facilities staff, grounds and maintenance teams that are not working right now. They're not doing anything. They're home. They should be, deployed to take care of the campus and to bring it up to speed. And I've talked with insiders about this because I was a little alarmed when I saw this. And it was confirmed to me, there are people who have not stepped on the campus since March, but have been taking full salary. and then they're paying a consultant to do this work. It's mind-boggling, the complete and utter disregard for the funding that they're getting.
Wow. It's really hard to hear this. So I wanted to segue at some point into the free city college phenomenon that's occurred. And I'm not sure if this is the spot to do it in, or whether there's another question right now where you've described the foundation of what a trustee, the skills that they need to have, and some of your background as well. But that is one thing that I really wanted to understand is, where are these resources coming from to fund the school? And is it the right way to go? Or are we going to, based on what the funding is, just going to pedal ourselves deeper and deeper into this hole?
So I would also just throw out there real quick, if anyone has a question, or if you don't think I've covered my background enough, please feel free to jump in, or if you want to hear more about something, definitely feel free to jump in. To move on to free city college, it's a phenomenal concept. Again, execution is very different, and the way that it's been executed is perhaps not ideal. But it's a phenomenal concept, and in a way, it's sort of like, city college is just like a public high school on steroids. It's a wonderful resource. It's a absolutely phenomenal resource for a totally rich, diverse cross section of our society. It is the kids who are starting out on a 4-year degree, and this is an extraordinarily affordable option to jumpstart their education, and it's wonderful. I mean, there's a lot of people who take advantage of that, and it's such a great benefit to their families, and to be able to go get a start at a really affordable place, and then jump to a UC, or jump to a state school, or jump to a private institution, and sort of that cost savings for 2 years is awesome. So that's really great, and that's something that I love. It really fuels that whole educational and economic engine that CCSF provides. And then there's, the vocational training, which is also so important and so critical to our community. And then there are job changers, or there are people who are, switching schools, and they're missing a few credits, and they take advantage of what's offered at CCSF, and they're able to get that. Or there are, my mom, who took a flower arranging class a couple years ago, and she, there are people who use that as a wonderful opportunity to meet new people, to stay vital, vibrant, engaged in the community. So it really serves a lot of people, and the idea that it's completely free is fantastic. Again, you have to, however, have some awareness of the funding streams when you just decide you're making something free. And so, just to maybe get in the weeds a little bit, I can pull back out if I need to, but free city college is actually different than city college being free. That's actually a program by the mayor's office, and it sort of plays in and tries to support what is going on at city college. So it's sort of a different bucket than the city college budget, which frankly should be even more alarming, right? Because there's this different bucket that's funneling into the city college budget, and the city college can't even get its act together with that extra bucket being funneled in there. And then the sort of another question is, should all of these classes be free for everybody? Or should there be other funding sources available? So for example, someone like my mom, who's going to take a flower arranging class, she could afford to pay, for that class. She could afford to, charge $100 or something on a sliding scale, which would mitigate some of the deficit. And there's another sort of big piece to this, which is, course completion. When you make everything free, it's not as valuable to people. So if you had some sort of small fee associated with things, even a small fee, you might find that you have better course completion. There is right now I don't remember the exact number, but there's it's definitely not a majority or anywhere near that, but there's a band of people who are attending City College who don't complete. And when something is completely free, it sort of feels like you can kind of flow in and flow out, and you don't really need to value it that much. So there's definitely considerations there that I think should be thought through. I don't necessarily have the answer completely on that right now, but I do think that when you look at the dire situation of CCSF, you have to just be really open to considering every possibility. Because if we want to save this wonderful institution, this gem in our city, we do need to get it on firm financial footing. So to say it's going to be free, it's going to be free, it's going to be free, doesn't really mean anything if it closes, which would be a massive tragedy and an epic gap in education in San Francisco. I mean, can you imagine if San Francisco, one of the most vibrant, vital, innovative cities in the world, didn't have a community college? It's just not, it's not feasible.
And are we headed there? Is that with this 26% deficit you discussed earlier? Is that where we're headed?
Not if I can help
going
it.
to get worse? Okay.
I mean, and that's, honestly, I mean, I did not know I was getting into that when I decided to run. But if, you have to deal with what with the reality of the situation. And so I'm willing to do that. And I think if we can get some better board members, and again, the people who are currently on the board are lovely people. But they're just not experienced. They don't have the experience of running a large institution, and it shows in what's going on there. So we need better people on the board. We I mean, if there's one thing I will say bluntly, no incumbent should be reelected. They are both incumbents who are running are very nice people. I like them both personally, but they clearly don't have what it takes to run this organization. And if we can get some better people who have the will, I mean, that's the biggest piece of it, is the will to make changes. And that's why I think I was mentioning earlier that I refused all stakeholder endorsements. I did just get the Chronicle endorsement, which was really kind of cool, and very surprising, because I'm not part of the political machine. I mean, people who are political insiders all sent me notes like, that's unbelievable that they actually picked you, because they must really have looked and said, here
it is, finally,
to go with the most qualified person,
Right. But if they've been following what you've, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if they've been following what you've described, are the other folks who sat on this board and have run it in the ground.
Well,
when they met you, they were probably saying, okay, finally the real deal is shown.
Well, yes, but they did. It's interesting. They actually were very curious about my opening remarks. I was the only person in the forum whose opening remarks they followed up on. And one of my opening remarks was, that I'm completely independent. My whole goal here is to not be beholden to interest groups so that we can do what's actually best for the school. And they questioned me on that. John Diaz, the head of the editorial board there, said, well, tell us about that. What do you mean? And I explained, and I offered to send samples of emails, that every request I got to participate in an endorsement process, I sent an email saying my goal is to be independent, and I will not dilute that by participating in any process that is involved with any affiliate organization, anything that's connected in any way to CCSF. So when they are clearly not connected, I have participated in a few of the processes, but for anyone who is connected, I would not participate. And I think they were kind of surprised by that. And I think it was maybe the first time they really put a lot of thought into the kind of people who are running for CCSF, that I assumed it would be all people like me who have some sort of experience in this and are coming into it to really, elevate CCSF. And in my time, going through this process, what I've learned is that it really is viewed as a stepping stone. So all these staffers in, City Hall sign up to run for CCSF to get campaign experience, to be, to get elected to something, to be able to call themselves elected official in San Francisco. And that, just learning this as I've gone through this process was really eye-opening for me. And then it makes sense. It just makes total sense why things are going the way that they are. And I apologize. I don't think I answered your question. I think I answered the question I wanted to answer.
Well, no, I think that's fine. And I think that, where you're heading is what we want to know about. Like, why are people running for this office who don't have the experience, and what is the consequence to that? And that's what motivated you to step into this and say, wait a minute, what's going on? We've got this gem on the hill that's serving these different folks, these different populations. We're a world-class city. You use different words. I just chose that because it's brief, but, and here we are. What happens if we lose this? And there's a possibility there.
Yes.
And it's really egregious for me to hear you describing this, because so many of us, like you said, why does it matter? This is a down ballot position, so to speak, and not so many people find it glamorous and, up front. So why does it matter? Well, it matters because folks are using this as a cog in the wheel, a stepping stone to get into another position. And that's just not been your motivation. In fact, your motivation is the opposite. You've served these different boards over time, the breadth of your life, and you have experience with these boards, the hiring your chief or what have you, and then your leadership, and then also looking at the financial end of it. If someone else could take over for a minute, I think there's an emergency happening at my front door. Someone keeps getting a little bit afraid. So if John, could you step in while Marie maybe take another question, please? I'll be right back. I'm sorry, guys.
Absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for everybody that joined. And I do have one question. When I look at your vision for CCSF, I think one of the things that would draw me if I was in a situation where I'm trying to get into a particular field or what have you would be an internship or job placement opportunities within CCSF. And from your vision, can you explain a little bit more about how you would kind of grow that? Because I think you're right. This could be a real step up for people that are, low income or, want to make a change in their lives.
Yes, absolutely. So to be clear, I think the number one thing that needs to happen is the financial situation needs to be resolved. And meaning, we've got to go through, if I'm on the board, we are going through the audit with a fine tooth comb and fixing every single recommendation in there, and also get a permanent chancellor. But those two things, so those two things I just need to clarify are, we're on fire and we need to put those fires out first. Moving forward from there, what I want to do is get more creative. And I think when you have a background of having, been involved in different boards, different organizations, I think it's easier to get creative because you have experience and you've been through various permutations of what you want to do in the past, and you know what works and what doesn't, what the best practices are. So for example, with CCSF, I think there is such an opportunity available to leverage, the amazing innovation of San Francisco, the businesses here. And I mean, sort of at every level. I don't just mean, the computer programming jobs, but every level of vocational opportunity. I think we should be partnering. CCSF should be partnering with these organizations, with companies, businesses, even startups, where it's a symbiotic relationship. There's some teaching perhaps going on the part of the businesses where they are sharing sort of the innovative things that they're doing. There's funding to different programs. And you have students then coming out of that are sort of a ready workforce for these companies. And, how great is that? You have a job waiting for you, and there's a stream of employees for the businesses. So it's all very symbiotic, and it really, community colleges are an economic engine in their communities. And that would be such the perfect example of that. And then there's other tasks or other thoughtfulness that I think needs to be brought to bear to the situation. And, for example, in some of the other boards and organizations I've been involved with, one of the things that we've put some thought into is what happens in a changing work environment. So, one really clear example is self-driving cars. If these massive tanker trucks become self-driving, where do that 1.4 million jobs go? And, those jobs are held largely by people with high school degrees and maybe some college. So how do we bring them back in and retrain them for other things that are reflective of where the economy is going, or where our world is going, where the job market is going? And so to be thoughtful and proactive about what we take on as classes that we offer or programs that we advance. So those are some of the I think the ways that we could marry the innovation of San Francisco with community college. And it's such a phenomenal opportunity. And it's, if we can just get over this hurdle of potentially having the accreditation pulled and being in a terrible financial position, if we can just get over that, there's so much that could be done going forward that I would be super excited, to advance.
How would you get folks on your board to join you so you can have a unified voice, unified intellect, unified creative mind? I mean, this sounds like a big hurdle, and I'm getting very motivated hearing you. I don't have the skill set, but if I did, I'd join you. What can we do?
Well, it's funny you say that, Amanda, because when I was toying with running, and I really didn't think I would, I was trying to find some other people who would run, and because it for people who aren't looking at this as their, first step to the presidency, which, a lot of San Franciscans, think they're going to be president. So a lot of people in city government think that that's their end game. And so unless you're one of those people, but if you're looking at this as it really is, if you're looking at this as the job that it is, it's quite daunting. And so I was looking for other people to possibly run, or at least run with me. Like, hey, if I run, will you run too? And we could do this together. That would certainly be a lot easier if I had a buddy that we were going in together. But let's just say worst case scenario. That I'm the only sort of, there are a couple of other people running who I think are actually have at least some financial savvy. So that is great. But, just assuming for the moment, the worst case scenario that I'm sort of the only person coming into this role who really has a lot of experience in this. It is a really good question. How do you get people to come along with you? And what I can say is I have had experience on many boards and in many organizations where I was perhaps the minority when I came in. And I won people over with two things. One, my willingness to listen and to be respectful of their thoughts and their views and their ideas. And two, offering well thought out solutions backed up by facts. So I think it is always possible to get people on board. And I think one of the things about CCSF is that while I think once they're on the board, these are people who are well-intentioned, none of them really having any experience. I think with someone coming in who has a lot of experience, I think it is, in a way, would be actually quite doable to say, hey, I've had this and this and this and this experience. I think this is the path, what about that? And I think, if there was a real leader in their midst, I do believe they would get behind that.
Okay. What is the health of the school right now in terms of the impact of COVID, and what's your first step to respond to the disjointedness right now in terms of kids not coming to brick and mortar?
Can I take 1 second to turn the light on?
Yes. Yes. Please.
It's gotten dark.
I answered my door.
And I realized I was sort of fading further and further into the background. So it's bad. As I noted, there has been a 24% decline in enrollment this year over last year. That's a quarter of your school. That's really, really, really bad. The rest of the community colleges in California have seen declines in enrollment. Some are flat. Some are actually thriving. Usually in a pandemic, not a pandemic, excuse me, we haven't had this before, but usually in an economic downturn, you see a spike in enrollment, especially at community colleges. So it's telling, that there's been a 24% decline in enrollment. It really does speak to the lack of leadership at the school. I would say the school definitely was not prepared for online learning. That has been extremely difficult, according to the many teachers that I've spoken with, as well as the students. They did, to their credit, they have provided tools when necessary, tablets or laptops for students who otherwise would not be able to access their online classes. So, they did, I think, try to respond a little bit in that way. But, I do think there is a need for a serious look at their online learning plans, and how to take what was developed during this crisis and improve it, and also potentially, so you're ready for however long this lasts, but also that you could potentially use it as another tool in your toolbox for teaching in general and for keeping some costs down. And I mean, I don't think anyone loves online learning. Let's just be honest. For those of us who have kids or who are at work and who are constantly on Zoom, it's objectionable, to put it mildly. So, I would not envision a future where it's a majority of online learning, but I think it could also, it could be incorporated when you're looking at a really bad financial situation at the college, when you're looking at the fact that we've now been through this for a while and have hopefully developed some best practices. And if they haven't yet, I will help them develop best practices. That it could potentially be used as a way of bringing more affordable education in targeted ways going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any other? Oh, go ahead, Brad.
I just want to add my experience. City College has been a very valuable institution in my life. When I was going to high school and about to graduate, I almost flunked out of high school. I did not understand what the use of education. I didn't see any value in it. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. And, I was 17 years old and I wasn't very smart. So I went out and I went out and got a job. And after a couple of years of working, I realized, oh, maybe a college education isn't a stupid idea. But I mean, I hardly, my grades were terrible. I almost flunked out of high school. And so there's no way I could get a decent education with with what my background was. But City College was there. And so I went to City College and I paid attention because I really understood that this is something that could be really valuable. And I ended up being able to transfer to UC Berkeley, which is a school that there's no way in hell I could have gotten into from the start. But after 2 years at City College, I went to UC Berkeley. And when I got there, I realized that I had a better education than the people who did their lower division at Berkeley, because the lower division at Berkeley was being taught by kids that were just graduate students themselves. They weren't the professional teachers that I had at City College. So I have the highest regard for that school. It's made a major difference in my life, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that have had a big impact on their life with City College. And I think it's a very valuable institution. And I really commend you, Marie, for trying to fix it and put it on a correct path.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your story. It's being filed away, and I hope you don't mind. I won't use your name, but I might refer to it in the future. What you said, I have heard so many times now when I talk to people who have spent some part of their education at CCSF, whether it's, a student who's transferring from one school to another and they need to make up a few credits. I am hearing over and over again the education that I got at CCSF, the teacher that I had at CCSF was fantastic. It was better than, a lot of the teachers I'd had at my various, private schools, et cetera, et cetera. So I love hearing that. And it really resonates with so many people I've spoken with on this journey that I've been on to advocate for CCSF.
I have a story. I think I told you, I'll throw it out there just to add to your repertoire, is that, I left high school not knowing what I wanted to do. I just was very unclear. And I know a lot of young people feel that way. And so we had Orange Coast College next to where I lived. And I just pulled up one day. I think classes started the next day. And I was always behind the camera because I was a real shy kid. And so when the Polaroid land camera came out, I just carried around with me constantly and took photos. And so I took a photography class, and the lead of the head of the photography department at Orange Coast College was John Upton, who studied under Minor White, who was one of the main photographers in the F-64 group. And that's the one that Ansel Adams was in, and Imogen Cunningham and Steichen and Stieglitz and all those guys. And it was interesting because the quality of the photography I was learning was basically that school of folk. And how more of a fabulous education could you get than by studying under those folk? And we would have visiting professors, and they were all friends of John Upton's, who were the preeminent photographers in our country. So I met some of those people. So that's my story. I just praise junior college, city college, for these reasons. And it was a great stepping stone for a young person. So I agree with you, Marie. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening and hear your stories and hear what your story is, I should say, and what your plans are. And I would like to know if there's any other more way I can help you in this journey to get you through the winning line upcoming on November 3rd. I hope you reach out to me and other folks here. And if we get published, the other people who read and watch this might also consider helping you across this finish line, because you're a gem and you're just filled with so much intelligence and so much motivation and desire to get this right. And our city certainly needs it right now. I mean, we certainly need it. So I just wanted to offer that to you along the way here.
Thank you so much. John, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, I was going to say, Amanda, we might, one of the Safe and Healthy Haight members, and I spoke, Mrs. Burke here, and she has a personal story, and hopefully, are you open to kind of
I have a couple
sharing?
I have a couple. I'm so sorry for being late, so I don't know what I missed, but thank you so much, Marie, for spending time with us, and
Absolutely.
And we are lucky that you are running. I came from out of Georgetown University. I had a Fulbright, and I was teaching at City College because I wanted to teach students like Brad and others that really needed me, not other kinds of students. I wanted those students. And I taught for about 8 years as a part-time teacher. And we had, in the ESL department at that time, this is 30 years ago, we had, we were part-time, although we were teaching sorry? Hi. We were teaching full-time hours, but we were considered part-time, and every summer we would be let go, and we would have to go down to claim, we'd have to get money from the city.
Unemployment, maybe?
Unemployment, exactly. And I, of course, never did that. Well, that's not true. I did it for 2 years, but it was humiliating. And somehow it felt like well, City College wouldn't pay us or wouldn't give us full-time positions, but yet we would be hired back every year. And that's anyway, that was wrong, and it was grossly mismanaged, and I finally left. But years later, I was actually offered a vice principal position for night classes at our Haight City College, but couldn't take it because I had just had a baby. That baby, 25 years later, was at university and wasn't doing well, so I pulled him out, and he went to City College, and then on, just like Brad's story, went on to university, and then took a class at City College, took a certification in administration, justice and administration, that had, just as John was saying, that had an internship with Jeff Adachi, actually.
Oh, wow.
When Adachi was still alive, and my son went to Hastings after that, and became a public defender. So City College does have its place and is very important for all kinds of socioeconomic.
Absolutely. Yes.
So thank you for being there, and please let me know if I can help.
Thank you so much. Jane, did you want to pump in? I just saw
My video on, video off. I want to say two things. Amanda, your earlier question about how Marie will be able to bring people together and bring them to what she's thinking. And I did work with Marie on the board of Hamilton Family Center, which is the largest family homeless shelter in the Bay Area. And sometimes, because we had kind of a green board, sometimes we would be talking in circles. And once Marie joined the board, she would listen to everybody, and then she'd come in and she'd be like, okay, well, we've done it this way in the past at this other organization, and that worked really well. And it was such a logical, sensible way of doing things. So she was easily able to bring us along. And it was so incredibly helpful because she had a lot of experience at the board level. But my question, Marie, to you is, one of the things for funding is if you've had a 25% drop in enrollment, is it, my heart always goes out to those in need. And I'm thinking that the state will give you money for each student you can bring to the university. And I would love to see a heavy recruiting effort go into maybe Bayview schools or schools in need. I know you're so good at recruiting people. And I'm just wondering, would that help, gap the fiscal deficit?
Yes. I mean, definitely one of the problems, it becomes kind of a vicious cycle. When you have fewer students, you get less money from the state. So that's what I was referring to earlier. The state funding formula, provides funding to the school from the state for certain types of students. And so that is definitely helpful. That is definitely something that should be done, is recruiting, and also just, sort of ensuring that there continues to be a wonderful cross-section of the community that's there. And for sure, the losses in enrollment over the last several years have resulted in a massive drop in funding. In the last couple of years, it's been a $95 million drop. So that is very impactful. That definitely hurts. And unfortunately, the leadership currently there is not responding to that, is not saying, okay, we need to kind of bring it all in and figure out what is our plan going forward, and how are we going to recruit, and what are the buckets that we can tap into, and what are creative options that we have, and how do we cut expenses. And might have mentioned this earlier. I mean, they gave themselves a 10% raise last year. All the administration got a 10% raise. So I mean, why are you getting, you're not even doing a good job. Like, you couldn't even say you deserve it. So the fact that, you know, they would do that when the CCSF is in a financial free fall is very concerning. And it does really, I just cannot stress enough how it screams to the notion that there needs to be independent directors on this board. And, you know, I mean, unfortunately, the way it works is you secure the various stakeholders endorsements, and then those people spend money and volunteer time to get you elected. And then once you're elected, you give them what they want. And that model doesn't work. It's working for the people who are taking from that model. It's not working for the school. It's not working for the students. It needs to just be better thought out. It needs to be better managed. And there needs to be someone on the board who is capable of saying, no, you know, I get that you want that, but now isn't the time for a 10% raise for administrators, you know? And by the way, we have teachers who haven't received raises in forever. You know, I mean, it's, and then the overhead at all these different schools, it's the same massive bureaucracy at all the different locations. I mean, that could easily be condensed. So there are some significant actions that can be taken and can be taken fairly quickly that will help a lot. But there's just been no will to do so. And that's I mean, that's why one of the things I'm running on is just, you know, good board governance. We need at least one independent director who can be the scapegoat for everybody else. You know, that's fine. I'll be the scapegoat. So, but yes, exactly. We should be recruiting. We should be doing all these things to kind of meet the requirements to bring more money in.
It seems like the current plan is just to cut classes, shutter buildings. Like, that doesn't seem, I mean, that just seems like you're giving up. You're just rotting from within.
Well, you know, you just reminded me of one comment that I've heard. And Garrity, you might, if some of your friends are still there, you might have heard this too. I've had at least 3 teachers say to me, and it just, I don't know if I can say it without like almost crying, that they feel like they're on a sinking ship. And
Right.
that just, it breaks my heart to hear that. This is such an important institution, as we all, violently agree on that it is such an important institution, and for it to have been mistreated and mismanaged the way that it has is just unforgivable. I mean, it's why I say, like, the incumbent, we cannot vote for any of the incumbents. They have run it into the ground, and it's just, you know, whether they're good or bad people, you know, I'm sure they're lovely people, but they're not capable. Clearly, they've proven that over the last 4 years, 8 years. They're just not capable of running it. They need at least one person to, you know, say, no, this isn't working.
How many people are running along? Sorry, may I interrupt?
Oh, yes. There's 10 of us. 10 people are running for 4 spots. Mm-hmm. There are 2 incumbents. 2 incumbents decided not to run again. And I have not directly spoken to them, but we have friends in common. And what I have heard is that, you know, they were so frustrated with just sort of bad news after bad news after bad news, and sort of they didn't really want to be part of the sinking ship. They were not sure that there was a lot of they weren't sure what was going to happen next, and they didn't want they didn't want that kind of negative on their resume, I
there's-
guess. Yeah. Which I totally get. I mean, it's not going well. And,
Mhm.
my fiance who just walked through has said to me, we've gone through the audit together. Poor guy, I make him sit there and go through it with me. And he's like, what are you getting into? Why would you do this? And it's one of those things I can't help myself. I'm like, it's desperately needed. And so I just have to do it. And I'm absolutely happy to take more questions. But before I lose people, I did want to say, Vote Marie 2020 is my website. Vote Marie, MARIE 2020 is my website. So please go on there. I mean, I have a lot of news stories about what's going on at CCSF. There's a lot of information about myself. If you were so inclined to make a donation, that would be awesome. But you can also ask for window signs. I mean, if you just put your address in, we will bring you a window sign. And then the biggest thing really is just telling everyone telling everyone that this is the person to vote for, assuming that you liked me. And unless you know any of the other candidates, please only vote for me. If you know another candidate and you have a reason for voting for them, great. But this is not ranked choice. This is the top 4 vote getters get the votes. So if you vote for me and then 3 people who you have no idea about, you might end up elevating somebody who really shouldn't be on the board above me. So that's kind of my if you can get the word out to all your friends and relatives and colleagues and then ask them to spread that word, that's so helpful. I am the underdog. Which is why it's so shocking that the Chronicle endorsed me. But yeah, so I'm the underdog. I need all the emails I can get.
Okay. Well, I, for one, am going to hit the pavement for you.
Thank you.
30 days, 25 days, whatever we have. I appreciate, yeah. I don't know if we have any other questions or comments from anyone.
Well, I'm just thinking of creative ways that we can help you. I certainly, 6 months ago or what have you, didn't think I was going to be an admin of a Safe and Healthy Haight with, 500 and whatever members and getting politically involved. I mean, honestly, I was one of those people that, I didn't know a lot about politics in San Francisco, even though I'm born and raised here. And so this has been a real eye-opener. And one of the things I was thinking of that I could possibly do with Safe and Healthy Haight is get the word out to all the members, and on select days, maybe change our Facebook profile pictures to your, Vote Marie, Vote Valley. It's free. It's a free thing that everybody can do, but I need to mobilize a lot of people. And honestly, in Safe and Healthy Haight, we've been, really focused on a lot of what's going on the street in the Haight right now. But I definitely think that this exemplifies it, and people don't really understand, is that, a lot of people that are, trying to, get people off the street and, 730 Stanion and homeless and so forth. A lot of people with low income could really make a huge impact in their lives by going to the community college, by doing these things. This is the tool by which they can, get the step up. It's been so patchwork, it's been so short term. I even ask, the people that do 730 Stanion, what is your exit strategy? What is the long term? There's a real need for a citywide audit. And my understanding is that the last citywide audit was over 5 years ago. So this is a big ticket item. And, the homeless budget right now with mental health and addiction and with Prop C money is approaching $1 billion. Okay. And our priority should be with the teachers and with the tools that will make the people that are disenfranchised more powerful and proud citizens of San Francisco. So I'm completely endorsing you for whatever that's worth. And I will try to, I'll try to, get people, to kind of see how important this truly is, to get someone that's independent, that's not beholden to special interests, that has your credentials, that is going to shake up City Hall. Because we have, and I don't want to go into supervisors and all that other stuff. I'm definitely pro Valley at this point, but I just love the fact that you're going to shake things up and create checks and balances, because we don't have it.
Yeah.
So
one thing I might add to anyone who really wants to get the word out there is it's so effective to hear Marie speak. I mean, this was so informative. This session was amazing. I'm so glad I was able to sit in on one. So maybe Amanda, once you package this and put it, it's something we can forward to people and email out, because I think there's nothing better than her talking about what her plans are. And it's something you can't, oh, sorry, my kid keeps calling me. Anyway, I think the best thing you can do is get this video out to as many people as possible.
It's a great idea.
okay. And I'll send it for everybody that was on this call. I will, I'll post it on Safe and Healthy Haight, and so people can grab it. And I'll send it to you, Marie, so that you can post it on your site as well.
Okay, that'd be
Thank
great.
you so much.
And send it to me.
And Amanda, thank you.
Oh, and
Yes.
thank you. And I appreciate the small amount of opportunity I've had, the opportunity I've had to offer you the small amount of time supporting you, Marie. And I just feel so strongly that you have so much to offer the city, given the wealth of information you have here. So we are 100% behind you, and hopefully, Godspeed, you'll get into office. So thank you.
Seriously, I mean, I really don't know what to say about City College if someone rational does not get on that board. It
feels that way in almost every political seat for a lot of us, all the way from down ballot, up ballot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we need to, yeah. And it's the year of the woman, so we need to.
Good.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Marie.
All right.
Thanks, folks, for coming.
Much. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank-
Really,
Thank
really.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.